Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the NRW. I'm your host, Rob Medina, and I thank you all very much for joining me here today because today I will be reviewing the movie The Follower. Now, I'm going to give a bit of a heads up here. When I do my reviews for the films I'm reviewing, and including the TV shows and even the conversations I have on my show, You're So Cool with Rob Medina, I like to have footages of what I'm talking about, so that way you have a bit of context about what I'm getting into here, especially when I'm highlighting certain aspects of the film that I want you all to see with what I'm getting into here. Unfortunately, I really couldn't get a footage that any sort of footage I could use over the review for me to highlight here. So a lot of what I'm going to be doing here is pretty much just like the old school ways I used to do the reviews way back in the day here on the channel. So I will still go into the similar structure that I've gone through before in my previous reviews, where I'll get into the plot synopsis, positives, negatives, and my rating. That's also be pretty much the same, but it's all going to be streamlined all the way through rather than all these cuts that you would normally get. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this approach here. But as far as the film is concerned, now I was very familiar with this movie before its release, and they made the movie early this year. I think, if I recall correctly, sometime in late January, early February, somewhere within that time, if I recall correctly. And when it was announced the list of actors that were going to be in the movie, the first one that came to mind that I was really excited to see was Tom Holland. Because for anyone who doesn't know, I'm a very big fan of Tom Holland. If you've seen enough of my reviews, you'll know that, and I've pointed out before in one of my other reviews, that he's in my top 10 favorite actors of all time. I think this guy is so good that anything that he touches, he takes that project to another level too. I think he's that good that he makes the project that much better. And there's a lot of things I will point out in my review about his performance, and among other things about this movie that I did enjoy as well too. But there were other actors that I was just not really familiar with at all, outside of Tom Helm, and also Monty Sapp, who, if you don't recognize the name, I'm sure you'll recognize the name under Billy Gunn, who is a pro wrestler, a legend in his own right. And for him to be playing the follower, the killer in this movie, I was really excited to see what he's going to pull off here, because I'll be honest, I didn't have any doubt that he was going to be any good, that he was going to be good. I knew he was going to be good. I was just curious to see what he was going to be bringing to the role, and seeing some other areas when it comes to his acting capabilities that I've gotten outside of wrestling. And I was very confident he was going to do a good job. And I can say that he does a good job with what he does in the movie. But there are certain things I will point about his performance, not about him per se, but more about how it was used in the film, which I'll get into here with my review. But outside of these two actors there, everyone else that I had come across here when I learned about who was going to be partaking in this project here, and I have to read the names off here because I'm always terrible with names. So the first one is Jenny Babas, who plays the character of LJ. And then Stephanie Ostelet, I believe is how you pronounce her name. If I mispronounce, I apologize. She plays the character of Tiffany. And then, of course, Michael Wageman, who plays the character of Chad. And then we also have Derek Redford, who I've also interviewed on my show, You're So Cool with Rob Medina, not too long ago, who plays the character of Joe, Brendan Igman, and Christopher Buer, cousin Mike, who also wrote this film. And that's one thing about this movie that I was really interested about here, too, because this film is written and directed by Brett Bentman, who I'm a very big fan of. I've reviewed several of his movies under the B22 banner, with films such as Buckskin, The Rodeo Thief, which is a film that I absolutely love, Bull Shark, just to name a few. So I've reviewed 6 of their films, this one being the 7th one. Although he did direct it, he did not write the movie, as I mentioned before, Christopher Buer. If I mispronounced that last time, I apologize here, but Christopher's the one that wrote this film. So I was really intrigued about his take on a movie that he was directing that he didn't write. So I was really curious to see how that dynamic would work when it comes to the overall picture in itself. I could tell, I'll be frank with you, that there were certain elements that wouldn't necessarily be more or less Brett's approach. I'm not saying the film was awful. It's not the case at all. And I'm not saying that certain things that didn't work out because it was written by somebody else. It's not what I'm getting at here. But there were some elements of the film that I did pick up on that just didn't click for me personally. And, as far as whose decisions it was at the end of the day, I'm not really sure, but certain things just didn't click for me all that well, which I'll point out here in this review. I will not get into any spoilers in this review at all, because there is a twist ending that occurs in this movie that I actually thought worked really well. But again, there are some elements that I'm going to point out here too, without getting into this review, without getting into spoilers. I'm going to say it in this review, but I will want to point out when it comes to the positives, that I actually thought the characters in this movie worked quite well. I did like them a lot. I'm not gonna say I love them, but there are strong elements about these characters that I took away from that I really did enjoy, primarily from the performance from the actors that you get. So for example, the two actresses I'm going to point out here are Jenny Babas and Stephanie Ostelet. Again, if I mispronounced the last name, I apologize. But I thought that I'll be completely honest here because there was a part of me that was thinking that they may more or less go through that cheesy horror thriller schlock that I've grown up loving. These are films that I'm a big fan of here. And I was wondering if that, if they were going to be more or less taking that approach and kind of have that cheesy element with, more or less cheesy acting. And honestly, I was quite surprised that wasn't really the case at all. I mean, are there cheesy elements in this movie? Yeah, there are. I think that whether it was on purpose or not, I don't know, but it certainly felt that way for me. But that's not to take away from the film because I felt certain aspects of the film were cheesy that it didn't necessarily work. To some degree, I felt like it didn't work, but there were many elements that it did work for me personally. But again, I'm not sure if that was the intention there because it clearly shows that they were trying to make this film very, very serious and very grounded as possible. And there was, I guess you could point out, there's some sort of commentary on there as well too about how certain people approach certain things to gain something out of it at the end of the day, which I thought was very interesting with their take on this film. But when it comes to the actress' performance in this movie, there were some really nice moments that I felt like did work when it comes to really delving into the character's mind, if you will, understanding where they're coming from and more or less why they're doing what they're doing. So that way, when you get that reveal in the end, it obviously makes more sense to you. But when it comes to the chemistry between the actors on the film, there was actually quite a lot of it too. Clearly, there was a parts in the film where you can see there's some tension between certain characters. And again, it's that side of the chemistry. Did it work? I thought it did. I thought there were some moments in the film when you have these two actresses delivering their performance that worked very effectively, in my opinion. But I will also want to point out too, when it comes to the male actors in this movie, in this case, like for example, like Tom Hallam, who is an actor I'm a very big fan of here. He's literally my top 10 favorite actors of all time. He's someone that I believe that anything that he touches will take up the project another level too. I knew for a fact that once I saw his name on the marquee that he was going to deliver no matter what, and he certainly does. And what's interesting is that this is the type of role that I'm not accustomed to seeing play, where he kind of plays like this more or less party type of guy. Just very, very different. And that's one thing I love about Brett when it comes to hiring Tom Hallam, where he gives him opportunities to try something new, to expand on his acting arsenal. And you definitely get to see that in this movie too, which I thought was really unique that and I know I've actually not spoken, but I've messaged Tom about his take on the role. And he said he had a lot of fun in playing this character. It was a lot of fun working on that set. And you can tell that everyone had a great time. So to me, it looked like everyone got along very well, and it translated very well on the screen as from what I see in this movie. Now, when it comes to the horror to this movie, or the suspense in this film, there were elements that it did work. Some of it didn't work as well for me personally, but I'm not going to get into that too much into that right now. But I felt like the setup was there and the buildup was there, and it worked effectively, I would say. And when it came to more or less like the actual character moments, that's really what I took away from the most from this film. Not so much of the horror. Not that I said the horror wasn't any good. It definitely was good for me, but it wasn't the highlight of the movie for me. But it really was more of the character moments that I've taken away from the most in this film that I actually connected with in the overall picture. Now, as far as Monty's concerned, who plays the follower in this movie, he was good. I liked him in the role. I thought he was very, very effective in terms of what he could deliver with what he was given here. Without getting into spoilers here, when it's revealed what the reason why things are happening the way that they are in this movie, how he delivered that side of the character, I thought he was very, very good. I actually liked what he was able to deliver when it came to his performance and showing a duality of the character when it comes to the killer and then getting to know the person. And when you watch the film, I hope you understand what I'm referring to that on there. But I thought he did a really good job with it because I had no doubt that he could deliver. I was just curious to see how, I hate to say it like this, but I'm going to be honest, how well he could deliver it in this respect here. And I thought he was good. I thought he was really, really good in my opinion. Here's what I'm also going to point out too, to kind of more or less close up on my positives here. But when it comes to the overall story in itself, I actually did like the story. I really did like that approach with the story where there was a killer who attacked this social media personality, and she's terrified and wants to get away from it all. And taking time to breathe and taking time to recollect herself and having her friends to be there to support her along the way. And I actually thought that that was a really good approach with that story. And then as the story progresses along the way, certain things start to unfold that you question. Now, I'm not saying question because you were questioning the story, at least for me, I should say, because I'm only speaking for myself, but you question about certain motivations to the character that I thought was actually quite intriguing. And then once you get to the ending, it all makes sense. And I actually thought it was very fitting. I actually thought it worked very well in that respect. But for me, that's where the positive is going to end. So now I'm going to go and get into my negatives here. My first negative with this movie is going to be this. Certain aspects of the film, when it came to the execution of the horror, didn't necessarily work for me all that well. As I mentioned before, the best thing that I got about that I took away from the film were the actual performances and the character moments that you get from these films, from these actors, who I thought all did a really good job. But when it came to the execution of the horror elements here, the setup was there, and I thought was good to start the setup. In certain respects, some of the execution didn't work all that well for me. It wasn't done horribly, it wasn't done terribly. That's not the case at all. It just didn't work for me personally. Whether it was intentional for it to be executed that way, I don't really know, but I can tell that if it was meant to be executed that way, maybe it was supposed to be added. It was supposed to be done that way to add that cheesy element to it that most of us who have grown up with these horror slasher horror films, where that is the trope that we get, and it works for those who love that movie, and where those films have become successful as a result of those tropes that have been developed throughout the years that were done very effectively for people like myself come to love. But for some reason, it just didn't work for me in that respect. It wasn't horrible, but it just didn't click for me. Now, when it came to the ending, again, without revealing the movie to you, without revealing the end to you, it was done well, but I felt like something else was missing about certain pieces to lead up to that moment of that reveal, and certain things that led up to the end of the movie, which I actually thought the ending was good, and the way it just ends on a more of an ambiguous note, if you will. I thought that was very effective, but there was just certain components that I felt like was missing to add on to those layers that I thought needed to be fleshed out further for you to be able to, at least for me, to be able to fully connect and fully, not to say understand it, because I did understand it, but to fully understand certain aspects of this character that we're following here, to really have a what's the best way to say it, a proper I'm trying to see how I can go about this here, a proper connection, at least for me. Maybe some people watching think they have no idea what I'm talking about. It is what it is, but that's how I felt about that. Now, when it comes to the use of the follower played by Monty Sapp, I liked the character. I really did. And I felt like this was an opportunity that I'm not going to say that you can make another iconic killer. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about the opportunity to showcase some of the more darker elements of the character. And then when you get that reveal, which was a bit surprising, but getting another aspect in that darker side of the character to really connect with what the character is, I mean, we know what their motivation is, but there's just certain elements that I feel like was missing, that the opportunity was right there, and they never took on that opportunity to really expand on certain things. It was almost cut and dry in a lot of ways, which isn't wrong, which isn't a bad idea. Not to say that because it's a horror film, that's just the way it is. No, I think just because it's a horror film, that doesn't mean you don't have to worry about that stuff. I think you can expand on things and certainly exceed expectations, if you will, to people who are not expecting much out of it. But I felt like there's a lot of opportunities that you were presented that were never really fully fleshed out up to certain points. But then when you have some other areas of the character, say for example, like the follower played by Monty, there was so much that I thought we could have gotten more out of that character. And again, with what Monty was able to deliver in his performances, I thought he did a really good job. Unfortunately, it just didn't click with me all the way, because there were so many opportunities that were there that were just never taken advantage of to be able to expand on certain beats, as mentioned before. And again, not to say that he could have been another iconic serial killer. It's not that. It's about showcasing other elements that I believe that Monty was able to pull off here that could really showcase what he could do in providing some more texture to the character, that we would have gotten a lot more out of that, maybe to in a lot of ways sympathize with the guy. Not to say that the reason why he does these things was right, but be questioning, like, I feel for the guy, but I know it's wrong in doing that. And that's the complexity I want that character to get with that character to get out of us that I didn't necessarily get, because I saw that potential in seeing that, and we never really got that. So for me, that's going to be kind of more or less some of my the end of my negatives here, because there's certain other things that I want to get into that are in that spoiler territory for both the positive and the negatives that I will not get into this review. But I do know that there are going to be some people out there who may not like the movie, and I know there are going to be some people who may enjoy the film, and for the reasons why they may and may not like here, I can certainly anticipate that I would agree with both sides of it here. But I was more interested in the more complexities that the characters that you got to see in these characters that weren't necessarily delved into further, that I would like to see expanded on a bit more, because there was a lot of great opportunities to get a character arc and a character study that was right there and just was never taken advantage of, which I thought was a missed opportunity for me personally. But that's gonna be the end of my negatives here. So as far as my rating is concerned, I will say this. I know that I said before that there's gonna be some people who will like the movie, who will not like the film, and I understand what those reasons may be. But I do believe that this is a film that can be enjoyed with a group of friends. Like horror films in general, but in this case with horror movies, in this case thrillers, I should say, there is a unity that brings out the best in people when you have people come over and watch a horror film and then just have a good time with it. And I think you certainly can get that with this film. And when you get that reveal at the end of this movie, whether you like it or not, or whether you agree with it or not, I still think there's something you can get out of it, where you're going to have people discussing about what they didn't like about it, what they did love about it, and then have a conversation come out of that here and just have a good time with it. So I think this movie does offer that in that respect there. But my overall feelings of the film, I'll be honest with you, this is not one of my favorites of the B22 productions here. And although the positives do outweigh the negatives, but I'll be completely frank, it just only outweighs it by that much more, not a whole lot, because there were a lot of problems it did have with the movie that it didn't really connect with. Although I did enjoy the film, I had fun with it. Is this a film I would go back and watch? Absolutely, because I'm a big supporter of B22 and everyone that's involved with this project. I do think that they had a good project here and they had a good movie out of it, but some of the elements of the film that I thought could have worked very well just was never delved into further, that I thought could have been done more. It could have been done to effectively tell the story and flesh out certain details that I thought were just missed opportunities. Not to say that this is slight on anyone else who's taken on the project that didn't do a good job. I just felt like there was a missed opportunity in a lot of areas that we could have expanded on further to make the story a little bit more fleshed out, make it, I hope they don't mind me saying this here, but to make it a little bit better. But not to show disrespect to anyone who's worked on it here, because I understand they worked very hard on it. But that's my take on the film here. So I don't like to normally give up this rating here, but unfortunately for me, this is how I do feel about the movie at this time. Maybe in time, my opinions on the film may change for the better, for the worse. But at this moment right now, for me, this movie is just worth a shot. And those are my thoughts on the film. If you have seen the movie, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I believe that the film will be available on Amazon Prime in the very near future. At least as of this recording, it hasn't been revealed as far as when the film will be coming out. But I do know that B22 and everyone else involved with the project will announce it. So make sure you check them out on social media to keep up with that. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and make sure you share, like the videos, and hit the notification bell while you're down there. And also follow us on our social media accounts as well too. On our Instagram page, New Release Wednesdays, on Facebook, Nerds Rule the World, and on Twitter at the NRW. And you can follow me on my social media accounts on Instagram and Twitter, Mr. Rob Medina, and on Facebook, simply just Rob Medina. And my show social media accounts on Instagram, You're So Cool with Rob Medina, and on Twitter, You're So Cool WRM. And I want to thank you all very much for joining me here today. I hope you guys enjoy this review. Until next time, stay safe out there and cheers.